Do you wish your toddler or preschooler behaved better? Do you wish your toddler or preschooler would listen better? And do you wonder what you could do to help him or her listen and behave better? So the big question is this: how do we navigate through the mountain of overwhelming, often contradictory, and sometimes false parenting information we find online? What parenting information should you believe and apply, and what should you reject? That is the big question, and in this podcast, we will help you understand what underlies your child's behavior and explain how to react in a way that favors your child's optimal development. I'm Alexandra Scherzer, and welcome to Dr. Solomon's Wisdom. Once our kids enter toddlerhood, they simply start doing more on their own. They're crawling and walking, which gives them the new opportunity to go places and reach things that they simply couldn't when they were babies. As they grow and become more mobile and able, they tend to get into more, do more, and try things that sometimes, or often, don't align with what we as parents would like them to do. If you haven't listened to our podcast about punishment for toddlers and preschoolers, I suggest you listen to that one first. You can scroll back and download it, listen to it, and then return to this podcast. In it, we went over a framework that will help parents avoid punishing their young children. And today's topic also has to do with getting young children to behave better. We will focus on the benefits of rewarding good behavior. So there's a lot of information online about how parents can help correct young children's behavior, and a lot of it is focused on various forms of punishment. What is the best way to help young children listen and learn to do the right thing?
With the little ones, there are several ways, and if you look at the scientific literature and studies that have been done on the topic of child development, you will find that reward is far more effective than punishment. And punishment is often destructive and inefficient.
And this was something actually that we went over in our last podcast. So what's the first way that parents can help their young children learn to do the right thing?
The first thing is prevention. Try your best to not put your child in a position where she can do something you don't want her to do. For example, if you don't want her to write on the walls or on the furniture with crayons or pens, then you should put these out of her reach. Another example, along with childproofing, is to put away or out of reach anything that would upset you if your child damaged or destroyed it. Children pick up, play with, throw, roll objects in order to learn. Very often what looks like bad behavior is really curiosity and creativity. The idea is to set up your living space such that the rooms that your child has access to really only contain the furniture and objects that your child can safely touch and learn from. Seeing as your child is curious and creative, and parents should encourage these characteristics, the best way to avoid or decrease the chances of your child doing something she shouldn't do is to set up the situation so that this can't happen in the first place.
Okay, and so then what is the second way to get young kids to listen and behave better?
When your child does something that you don't like or don't approve of, instead of reprimanding her and telling her not to do that thing, show her what she should do or say instead. Up to about age 3. This is something we went over in our previous podcast on punishment, but I'll repeat it here because it's so important. When your child does something that you don't like or don't approve of, instead of reprimanding her and telling her not to do that thing, show her what she should do or say instead. Up to about age 3, show her and tell her what she should do instead. From around age 3 and up, you can start asking for her input. How could she have better handled the situation? And if she's angry or unhappy, help her to express her feelings in words. Then, if after she has expressed her feelings, she has trouble offering a better solution, help her to think of options. This is all part of raising an emotionally healthy child.
Okay, so what's the third way that we can get young kids to listen and behave better?
The third big thing, if you want your child to listen better, is to reward. Reward means lots of attention for positive behavior. And the most powerful reward of all is direct attention for the behavior you want. Attention is a reward, and rewards dramatically increase the probability that the behavior you rewarded will be repeated. When you see your child doing something or saying something that you want her to, tell her, thank you, give her a hug, say, that's great, say, good job, show interest. And I think you can think of a lot of other ways that you can do this. But you don't have to knock yourself out to do this every single time she does something you want her to do, or she didn't do something you didn't want her to. Because when you reward her fairly often, she will learn to reward herself. This is very important. She will learn to reward herself. When she learns to reward herself, she will do what you want in order to get that feeling of self-reward. And in case you are concerned that you are manipulating her in some way, you are not. Human beings need to reward themselves, inside themselves, in order to become competent working adults. And this is where it starts, in early childhood. You want her to be self-motivated in whatever small or big tasks she undertakes in the future. I'll mention here that we will have another podcast during which we'll talk about the dangers of rewarding negative behavior, especially aggressive behavior. And before we move on, I want to underline that a reward is not a toy or a purchase. A reward is something physical and or emotional. Physical is a hug. Emotional is, I love you for that.
So are you saying the parent shouldn't buy a small toy as a treat for having done something right?
The answer is no, they shouldn't. The reward should be as I described earlier. Parents can buy her that toy and 100 others if they can afford it, but not as direct rewards for good behavior. Parents should buy her toys because they love her and they want to make her happy or make themselves happy, but the toys shouldn't be contingent on good behavior. And we'll have another podcast on the dangers of using the purchase of toys as a replacement for love. So buy toys to buy toys and keep it separate from rewarding good behavior.
Okay, so let's move on to the fourth way to get young children to listen and do the right thing.
Well, the fourth way is by modeling. Modeling is one of the things that you are automatically doing when you are in the presence of your children. Children are constantly watching the world around them, and particularly the people that they're living with and are attached to. So whatever you do as parents may be modeled on by your child, given their level of understanding and their physical development. That is, they will do what you do as they understand it, and if they perceive it as rewarding. Many parents may have heard of or are aware of modeling, but there's an important piece of the puzzle that is often overlooked. That is, the child is not only watching the behavior, but is especially watching what happens to the person she is observing after the person's active behavior. If she likes what she sees happening after the behavior, she will do it. If she doesn't like it, she won't. Here's an example of a positive outcome. One parent comes home with the week's groceries and starts to carry them into the house. The other parent sees them arrive and stops what they're doing and goes to help to carry the bags in. The first parent expresses gratitude, thanks, maybe smiles. The young child sees the positive outcome of helping others. But it isn't as easy and simple as it sounds, because, for instance, if a parent does something that they don't necessarily want their child to do, but in the moment it's funny and everyone laughs, then the child will likely do it. Examples can be burping at the table or pulling the cloth from under the dishes as a magic trick. Children are always watching, and parents don't often realize that they have modeled the behavior that they don't want the child to undertake. Now, back to the important piece of the puzzle that I mentioned, which is the outcome of a behavior. When a child is watching and there are no positive or negative outcomes to a behavior, they won't be inclined to imitate it. A perfect example is parents coming home and hanging up their coats. The parents would like their child to hang up her coat as well. They may think that because they're doing it themselves and she's watching them, that she will imitate and that they're modeling this behavior. What happens here is that they are modeling the behavior, and it's better than throwing your coat on the floor. But there is no positive or negative outcome that she can see. So what I'm saying here is that for these types of neutral behaviors, like hanging up your coat or putting your shoes away when you get home, if you want to see progress on one of these with your child, you will have to do or say something that shows your child that there's a positive outcome for the parent and eventually for her if she undertakes a similar behavior. Start thanking each other, showing that you are grateful, showing that it makes you happy, that you don't take it for granted, and your child will more likely pick up on these positive outcomes for these mundane and boring behaviors.
So overall, what should parents focus on to get their young children to listen and behave better?
In my experience, I have found that parents are worried about how to teach their child to do the right thing. In fact, parents don't have to actively teach. They have to try to prevent, they have to demonstrate and explain what to do patiently and positively. They have to reward, and they have to model the behaviors that they want their child to imitate. And from all these, the chances are that the child will learn to behave as the parents wish her to.
So in conclusion, I think we can all agree that toddlers and preschoolers often behave in very trying ways. As parents, we want our kids to grow up knowing and doing the right thing. But contrary to the commonly held belief, you don't actually have to punish bad behavior in order to get good behavior. Parenting wisely in this case is to take on the full framework that we discussed today, as well as in our previous podcast on punishment. The idea is to decrease the frequency of misbehavior. Start with prevention, then show and tell them how to better do the things they want to do in a way that pleases you. Reward them when they do them, and model the behavior you want to see. As we often say, parenting wisely is the toughest job you will ever have, but helping your child to do as you wish by rewarding them and using this entire framework to help decrease the frequency of misbehavior is more than worth it. And not only will you like their behavior more, but you're also setting the stage for a good lifetime relationship with your child. We hope that you found today's podcast helpful. Come say hi on social. Our Facebook and Instagram accounts are @Dr. Solomon's Wisdom, all one word. You can subscribe to the Wise Parenting Podcast on any podcast app, including Spotify, the Apple and Google podcast apps, or wherever you listen. Parenting advice keeps changing on us, depending on what you read and who you listen to. This is making parents feel like they're doing a bad job. And worst of all, many parents today don't know who to trust for what is probably the most important job they'll ever have. So if you're the parent of a young child and you would like to feel clearer, more confident, and more at ease about your parenting decisions, then the Wise Parenting Academy can help you get there. With on-demand access to foundation lectures and seminars in digital, print, and audio, as well as exclusive one-on-one guidance from Dr. Solomon, the Wise Parenting Academy is the perfect next step to building the best long-term outcomes for your child. Come check us out at thewiseparentingacademy.com. Thank you for listening, and we hope you will join us again.